taught leadership and community organization for almost 20 years and has been named and served as the North Historian by Mayor Baraka, and also has a podcast and continues to educate called Everything's Political. Let's give it up again. Next up, Dr. Lauren Webb. Where she led and designed the implementation of the North Global Village School Zone here in Newark. In 2014, Dr. Wells was appointed Chief Education Officer of the City of Newark, and she is currently an educational consultant with her company Creek Strategies and speaker who works in schools and communities across the U.S. Let's welcome again. Then North Mayor Ken Gibson, the city's first African-American mayor, appointed him to the North Board of Education, making him the youngest fully empowered voting person to be appointed to the Board of Ed in the nation. He co-founded in 1983 the People's Organization for Progress and has been its only chairman. The People's Organization for Progress was formed for the following purposes: to educate the people about relevant social, economic, and political issues, to continuously organize and mobilize the grassroots community so that it can effectively solve its problem and fight for its needs. Again, we welcome Mr. Hand. So before we get started, we want to make sure that their mics are on, so we might need a little bit of support. You each have a microphone, and so I want to make sure that they are on. Okay, great. Awesome, thank you. All right. So we are going to spend the majority of our time talking about voting. But first, we want to honor the 50th anniversary of the National Black Political Convention, which happened in Gary, Indiana in 1972. Approximately 10,000 African Americans gathered to discuss, debate, and advocate for Black people in the United States. Part of the stated goal was to increase the number of Black elected officials, increase representation, and create a Black agenda for fundamental change in the lives of Black people in the United States. Amir Baraka called for the convention to practice unity without conformity. Now I want to start the panelists and take you back to that convention. I'm going to start with Mr. Williams. What did your activism and organizing look like at that time? And from that perspective, what did you hope would come out of the 1972 National Black Political Convention?
Thank you, Kalina, and thank you all for having me here. The convention was very interesting and probably was one of the first of its kind, and maybe one of the only ones of its kind. It wasn't the only one, it was the first one. But it was a place where the Black nationalists and the elected officials came together as equals. And that was very important during the day because, you see, if it had not been for Black nationalist organizations such as the Committee for Unified Movement, the politicians wouldn't have been elected. And they knew it at that time. And when I say black nationalists, there are many kinds of people who were, and the Committee for Unified Newark, represented best by my colleague to the left. It was kind of a cultural nationalist. I was not a cultural nationalist, but I worked with the cultural nationalists. And so when Barack the Elder said uniformity without conformity, that's what happened in Newark. There were many of us. The Committee for Unified Newark was necessary but not sufficient to elect Ken Gibson. Necessary but not sufficient to elect Ken Gibson. And when Barack said, well, we need to put this on the road so that we can show people just what we can do if we work together, uniformity without conformity, then we can do this someplace else. Well, what I got out of it, there's too many different little things, but let me just tell you what I think happened after that. The politicians who got elected because of the energy that came from people, organizations, coalitions that existed here in Newark, then began to push those people under the bus. The organization, the energy, the vision was all absorbed into electing people. So the only organization they wanted was the organization that would keep people back in office. That was the shame of it. That's where we lost, I think. And I think the convention, on the other hand, was a high point because it represented the possibilities. Those of us who chose to become what we now call nationalists, folks who thought about themselves as being equal to white people who wanted to know our history, people who wanted to infuse that history into school, people who wanted to understand and appreciate that black folks can do something, people who wanted to have a connection with what was then called the third world. That's who the black nationalists were, and by that definition, that's what I was. But at the same time, I believe in organization. I'm still a believer in organization. And all that I am today is because of two things, my parents and because I organized and have been organized into something. Unfortunately, a lot of that organization and those skills was drained in the 70s. And as we went forward, we have what we have now. And when we start talking about the voting parliament, then I'll pick up with that story.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Ham, Chairman Ham, you were probably among the youngest there. What were your thoughts about the convention?
If I may, Madam Moderator, I would like to follow Amina Baraka, because I think I've been in a lot of forums and people have heard what I have to say. It's rare that we get to hear from Sister Amina Baraka. I would follow.
I was leading into it because I feel the same way. But I would, all right. So I have a specific, well, you can answer however you want, Ms. Baraka, and I have a follow-up question if needed.
Okay, thank you very much. I am here under, I was not prepared to talk about the National Black Assembly. I came to talk about voting rights. I came to talk to get you out there to vote because we need that vote each and every day. That's right.
Okay, well, would you like to answer, or we can get right into it, to the voting rights? Mr. Ham, I was saying, would you like to answer the first question?
What was the first question again?
The first question was, what was your activism like at that time of the National Black Political Convention? What were you hoping to gain from it?
Well, my connection to the National Black Political Convention began when I was 17 years old. And it's important to understand that the work for the National Black Political Convention began probably in 1970. And because the convention took place in remember it was early March 1972. I was a student. I had been appointed to the Newark Board of Education at that time, and as a result of that, I came into contact with many political figures. but probably the person that had the most profound impact on my political consciousness was Amiri Baraka. I met him in August of 1971. And by that fall, the process going toward the convention was begun. Kalina, you mentioned that 10,000 people attended Gary. It's also important to understand that most of those 10,000 were elected delegates. There had been a national convention movement leading up to Gary. There had been local black political conventions, county black political conventions, state black political conventions, and the national black political convention. It's also important to understand in context that the convention movement began some years before the convention. Before the National Black Political Convention, there was the Congress of African People Convention in 1970. Then there was the 6th Pan-African Congress, which was international in its dimensions, which was before Gary. I mean, even if we go back to 1967, the Black Power Conference was held literally during the rebellion in July of 1967. And there was a Black Power Convention at West Kenny Junior High School in 1968. And then there was the Black Puerto Rican Convention in 1967, which led to the Community's Choice Team, which Ken Gibson was on that ticket for Mayor Shaw James, Dennis Westbrooks, and others, and they got elected in 1970. It's really hard to put in words the ethos of the time. It felt like a revolutionary period. We felt like we were going to change the world. And it is in that context that we see the importance of the struggle for voting rights. That struggle went on in the 50s, in the 60s. I guess you could say one of the two of the major accomplishments were the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And then there was the Higher Education Act, which made it possible for most of us to go to college. Most of us probably don't even know that, but we couldn't get into a lot of these guys. I couldn't have got into Princeton in 1965. You know, Higher Education Act, the Civil Rights Act of 1968, which was the Fair Housing Act, so on and so forth. So all these things we struggle for, and now we find ourselves here in the 21st century faced with the danger of fascism in this country. And everything that our people laid their lives down for. I mean, it might not seem like everything that we need, but believe me, people laid down their lives. I'm not talking about ancient history. I'm talking about 50s, 60s, even into the 70s. People laid down their lives for the right to vote. And now these fascists, you call them what you want. I'm going to call them what I want. They are fascists. They are fascists. And they have a fascist movement in this country, and we have to stop them. And one of the things we have to do, not all the things, there are many things we have to do, but one of the things we have to do is to vote. On Tuesday and keep these fascists from gaining more power.
Yes, Ms. Baraka, if you could pick up with you, why is it so important for us to get out and vote in this midterm election?
Yeah, well, am I saying that you're going to be very honest? I was under the impression that's what we were going to be doing. It's talking about getting people out to vote.
Yes.
Because that is the one thing that we can do, and we must organize our people to do so. We can have a history class at another moment, but at this moment, we got to get down here on the street. I have written a piece for this gathering. I didn't know we were going to talk about history, but I came to talk about voting. And my first line to this thing says, stay focused. Vote. It's voting time. It's women and men time. Roe versus Wade time. woman question time. LBGT community, who do you love time? It's labor's time. It's time. It's time. It's time. Like right now. It's voting time. It's indigenous people's time. It's our time. It's union time. Black, Latin, Asian, white, the people united. It's voting time. Unite, don't split. It's democracy's time. It's John Coltrane time. It's a love story. It's voting time. Defund Trump. Defund Trump. It's our time. It's voting time. Sing one note. Vote. Our future dependent on it. Voting this time. Sing one note. Vote. It's time to vote. And I got a song I want to sing. I ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Turn me around. Turn me around. I'm not gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking. Keep on talking. Keep on singing. Keep on dancing to the golden line. Power to the Statue of Liberty. It's the golden time. Keep on pushing. We can't stop now. Vote. Thank you.
Now that's the way you start a forum. Dr. Wells, Ms. Baraka has made it clear that it is voting time. It is voting time. And there's been a decades-long fight, multi-decade-long fight to protect the black vote. Yet, black people are torn as to why they should vote when it feels like nobody is listening. What would be your response to that, Dr. Wells?
Because your life literally depends on it. And I think you have to get real specific about that, right? Your housing depends on it. Your food depends on it. Your access to medical care and hospitals depends on it. Your access to schools depends on it. The things that we need to just live a basic life depends on whether or not we vote. And I think some of us are so removed from all of this history, right, including myself. I wasn't at the convention. I was born in 1972. So the further you get away from the people and the events that happen, the less concretely our young people are understanding literally that people laid down their lives and died. And so they have no understanding of the fact that who you vote for literally determines what happens in your life. And if you don't vote for people who value you, who love you, who want to see you have a bright future, then the possibilities, we've seen history. And so I feel like part of why it is essential to vote is because we know where we have been, and we do not want to go there again, and we have to do everything to protect what we have.
Absolutely. And who would like to take it on next?
What's the question again?
Why is it important for black people to vote even though they, people feel like no one's listening? Why is it important for us to vote?
Well, I thought she answered that very well. I look at it as, I look at this opportunity as an opportunity for us to learn about some reasons why people are not voting, as well as to encourage people to vote. Everybody in here So you see, we got a 100% just about participation in this room. But even though it's important in this room, even though we don't all voted, and we know people who are going to vote, probably in our families or in our little posse, I look at the New York Times and I read this every day. Lauren Wells asked me, is this your homework? And I told her this is just a mere pittance of what I look at each day. Because I try to stay woke. And you gotta stay woke by learning what other people are thinking about. I don't want the New York Times to be my Bible, but as I was teaching the Avid Leadership Institute, and I see a lot of us in here, ALI, right here. So that's good. You know that I often went to the paper to do the analysis. So that's what I want to do a little bit about. This says, even though all of us in here, I'm going to repeat, even though all of us in here have voted or will vote, there is a possibility that the Democratic Party may lose the House of Representatives and the Senate. So we ought to be concerned why. So here's an article that says, this is from Wednesday's paper, Democrats say party stumbles on messaging, lacking a strategy for a case on the economy. First paragraph reads, top Democratic officials, lawmakers, and strategists are openly second-guessing their party's campaign pitch and tactics, reflecting a growing sense that Democrats have failed to court us with one effective message with enough time to stave off major losses in the House and possibly decisive defeat in the tightly contested Senate. Well, first of all, you don't have to have one message, as Republicans have showed us. They got a whole lot of messages. They are anti-women's choice. They are anti-immigrant. They are anti-black people. They are just about anti-everything. And how come they are so effective? The next article, there's a whole lot on that. Then there's another one. This was from a columnist in the New York Times. Why aren't the Democrats trouncing these guys? Tell me how much time, if I'm talking too long, get done. The nation's votes are split into camps according to education level. Well, that's wrong. The nation is split around ideology. And it's the ideology of the right, which is very impactful because they know how to get that message out there. Ideology is anti-immigrant, anti-black folks, anti-women's choice. The whole list of what I was doing on anti-spending money on people at home, pro-business, pro-business. And then there's the other side, which is what we call the Democratic Party and the Democratic values, which is something opposed to that. The problem is the Democrats have not distinguished themselves enough to make folks want to come out and shout that.
That's right.
That is the problem. The problem is not that we don't know how to vote. The problem is that folks who are out there who do vote, they've been persuaded by the barrage of misinformation that's coming to them from the other side, and the Democrats have been unable to compete with that, not because they don't have the money, not because they don't have the access to the media, but because they don't have a clear position themselves of what the opposition needs. They want to say, well, we're going to put this law out here that's going to protect poor people, but they don't want to go against the people who have all the money, who don't want that to happen. They want to say we want to have a fair tax position, but they don't go against the people who say we want to have the tax bit, just like the last president wanted. All those people are secretly admiring Trump, even though they don't like Trump himself. So my conclusion is this: until we have a party that is clear about what its objectives are, a party that is truly for the people and willing to put themselves out there and use all that apparatus, until we get that, we're going to have a problem with the vote. And my prediction is the Democrats will lose the House and the Senate this time, because not just because the message is not clear, but because the ideology that's propelling that message has not been really something that people want to. Now, I want to close with just this. My son, who grew up in our household, and you know who my wife is, and Wade, you know who Junior Wade is, we certainly believe in participation in the political folks, with political folks, not just for politics. And he said, you know, I'm thinking about not voting this time. I said, why? Because the folks that you want me to vote for just aren't doing what needs to be done for people like me. Look how long it took the president to say we're going to pay off the student debt. Think of all the hundreds of thousands of people who would have rallied behind him when he messaged that. Well, he finally got the message out for only $10,000. Some people with $20,000. Some people won't get that, and now they're challenging it. Had he done the message earlier, we would have done some organizing, get their young minds and voices just like we were. We went to that convention. We were young. You're not like, well, you look so like her, you look like the rest of us up here. But the point I'm making is the Democrats have not done what they should have done to make people interested. And so, unfortunately, we are the minority and we want to pay for it. Now I've got something else to say about what we can do about it later on.
Yeah, Ms. Baraka?
Thank you. One of the problems we have is not really seeing the real world for what it really is. Truth of the matter, I do think we will vote. I do think we will get out and raise our fists and fight back. I do think that. I have to think that. Otherwise, I will just sicken my people and sicken myself. I have faith in our people. I have faith in the working class. I have faith in the community. I got faith. And I got this faith not because I want to have it, because I've seen us rise every time they knock us down. Every time they thought it was over, here we come back again. Only thing I'm here to do is to encourage you, encourage myself, encourage my young grandson, you know, that young yet, I got some great grandchildren. All I'm here to do is to put some right in your feet. Get out there and vote. Don't listen to these people telling you we're going to lose. They don't lose, we are winner. And there it is. We cannot just go home and look at each other. Hit the road, Jack. You better not come back no more.
What really has warned me is that, you know, the media controls a lot of this dialogue. But what some media is showing is that young people in universities are marching to vote.
That's
That
right.
folks are getting out, and there's some energy. It's happening. But we also know that there's a lot of effort to restrict voting. And in 2013, the Supreme Court in Shelby versus Holder invalidated a key provision of the Voting Rights Act. Among the invalidated decisions was an enforcement mechanism that prevented states from making changes to voting laws and practices if they have a history of voting discrimination unless they clear those changes through federal officials. So when it comes to efforts to stop folks from voting, how do we persevere? How do we persevere? How do we get people to persevere through those challenges? We go there, the polling site has changed.
If you encourage them to stop talking about things that we came through and what has been done. That's, look, how did we get a black president?
Come on.
They tried to keep Obama out that White House. I don't agree with that everything, but I damn sure agree with everything you're doing right now. Right now. And we should be out there helping out what he's doing right now. Encouraging our people to vote. He's not just talking to black people. He's talking to all people. All the oppressed people. He's talking to our youth. He's letting them know we got a chance. I ain't surrendering. He didn't surrender. And don't we surrender.
challenges when they want to vote. So how do we encourage people to persevere, to keep going, and to make sure that that ballot is passed?
We have to tell people to go and vote on Tuesday.
That's right.
There's only 72 hours between now and the close of the election. We have to tell people to go and vote. People are voting in record numbers. That's also in the New York Times. In Georgia, the voter turnout is actually higher now at this point than it was in 2020 for the Biden election. The youth vote is coming out actually in higher numbers. So, I mean, I understand the scientific approach, but when you drown, you got to swim. You can't just look, you drowning. No, you got to swim. And we got to swim. Now look, today we're going to be on Broad Market.
All right.
We're going to be on Broad Market bringing this message that our people need to come out and vote on Tuesday. In fact, there's early voting. It's still going on. There's early voting until 8 o'clock. Is it 8 o'clock tonight? And early voting until 6 o'clock tomorrow night. And then the early voting is over, and then the polls open on Tuesday. We need a record turnout. Look, yes, y'all saw us out there, People's Organization for Progress. We was out there having rallies to end student debt 3 years ago. 3 years ago. Now, of course, we want the abolition of all student debt, but do you know that 23 million people applied for that $10,000 or $20,000? So many people applied that it crashed the website last week. How many of y'all in here on Social Security? Don't be you know how old you are. Social Security, how many of y'all on disability? These Republicans want to end Social Security. They want to cut back Social Security. They want to raise the age of eligibility. They want to put a 5-year sunset provision on Social Security. How many of you could take care of your parents if Social Security ended? If we lose the House, they have already said this in the same New York Times. It was the front page article yesterday. Republican plans to do in Social Security. So, student debt elimination, Social Security, women's reproductive rights. These people are telling you right now, women, they don't put you back in your place. They don't put you back. How many women here want to go back to their place? No. Women's reproductive rights should be federal law. Women should have a right to control their own lives. Every bill, you don't have to take my word for it. You can Google it. Every bill that has come up in this Congress that would benefit people, they have either voted against it 100% or 90%. It ain't even been less than 70%. They oppose all social change. The only thing they voted for was a $2 trillion tax cut for the richest people in this country. No, what we need today is a united front against fascism. The Democratic Party, no doubt, the Democratic Party is problematic. Yes, it is a capitalist party. There's no argument there. But it wasn't the Republican Party that passed the Civil Rights Act. It wasn't the Republican Party that passed the Voting Rights Act. It was the Republican Party that passed the Higher Education Act, the Fair Housing Act, the Environmental Protection Act, the Workers' Right to Unionize. All of that was passed by the Democratic Party. Yes, I understand
state assembly. I ran in the November election against the Democrats and the Republicans. I'm the only one in this room that publicly endorsed Ralph Nader when he was running for president. But I'm telling you right now, now's the time to close rank and stop these fascists. They must be defeated. Listen, they must be defeated. And we have to unite. The road runs through New Jersey. The Democratic margin is so slim in the House. It's only a 6-person vote in the House that we can't lose one congressman.
That's right.
So whatever congressional district you in, you should make sure our people are not voting for the Republicans. Not voting for the Republicans. I mean, just think about it. The day, I mean, who is the party of the attempted coup? There was an attempted coup in this country. An attempted coup and a violent insurrection. They literally tried to overthrow the government. They tried to stop the peaceful transition of power. And what was the part? In the same day that they climbed the walls to get into the Capitol, kicked in the windows, beat up and killed police, the same day the Republicans came back and voted against the certification of the Electoral College. We should be trying to put into implementation the 14th Amendment, Section 3. None of them should even be on the ballot because they supported the insurrection and the coup in the United States of America. It shouldn't even be on the ballot. Van Drew in the 2nd Congressional District of New Jersey in South Jersey. Van Drew, who had been a Democrat, switched to the Republican Party, became a Trump loyalist. He voted against the certification. There are 590 Republican candidates running for office. 320 of them are election deniers. Now, what is an election denier? An election denier means we don't care who won the damn election, we taking power. That's the essence of fascism in the United States of America in the 21st century.
I'm united with all of that. All of that. That's what we should start with. Because we're wasting time. We're wasting time by fooling around with things we can't do. We know we can do, and we must get out there and do it. What time that rally we talking about?
As soon as this is over, we go on the board market and our leaflets.
Well, see, that's what we should be doing.
Leaflets in the back.
Call everybody and go and get them all out. Because you got to remember this. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. Black, Latin, Asian, white. Black, Latin, Asian, white. Now that's the truth. Go ahead, Barry.
Get people out on Tuesday, and you are a president of a library, but you also represent other institutions. Institutions that are Black-led, institutions that support democracy. What can we do in the next few days to make sure that people vote on Tuesday? What would you encourage institutions to do with the power that they have?
I would encourage institutions to use their social media. I would encourage institutions to the extent that they legally can to use the people that work in their buildings to amplify the fact that you need to get out and vote. To the question you asked, that was specifically about what should people do if they show up and they're having issues with voting. It made me think about how you opened and the whole unification without conformity. This conversation is happening in every community you can think of. And there are organizations in every community that are focused on getting people out to vote and focused on making sure that people can vote. So if you show up somewhere and get turned away or have a problem, then you should call an organization. And you should have people go back to the voting site with you to make sure that you're able to cast your vote, because that's the purpose of being unified. So I think that's a real concrete response to a reality that people may face. You show up, you get turned away, you go out and you get popped. You go out and you get the New York Street Academy. You go out and you get the organized political offices that exist all over the city, and you say, I've been turned away and I want to vote, and I want people to help me make sure that I can cast my vote. Because it is that serious.
Thank you, Dr. Wells. If you have trouble, you have people that can help. And if you have issues in New Jersey, you can call 1-866-OUR-VOTE to check your voter registration and to locate your polling place. You can use voter.njsbrs.com. Mr. Williams, now, I just want to tell what I've been seeing and hearing. And Dr. Wells, a couple of our colleagues in the work that we do now, I saw them post on social media that they are fearful either way. People are saying that while they know that it is important for the Democrats to control the House and the Senate, that they are scared that if they were to win and that were to happen, what would happen in this country? What kind of political violence might result? And so that's a very real concern that educated folks are expressing, all kinds of people are expressing. How do we respond to that, Mr. Williams? How do we respond to that?
That's a very important question. Before I answer that, though, I want to just leave you all. I don't want to leave you with the impression that my son is not going to vote, because he is. He hasn't already. And I also want to say the approach that I have taken to the discussion is not with respect to the people in this room or anybody in Newark, because we don't have that threat. We don't have to worry about who's going to Congress from here, and of course the Senate is not up this time. But what I'm saying is that very important for us as people who are active in this room, who think ahead, and to do the analysis that I want us to engage in, because if it happens now, it's going to happen again. So we need to know what kind of party, what kind of organization do we need to make sure that we don't slip and fall the way we have. And if you don't understand the history of it, you can't possibly understand where we are now. And if you don't understand where we are now, you can't possibly understand where we're going in the future. So it's nice to say we need to get out and vote, we need to get out and vote. And as I pointed out by your hand raising, everybody in here is going to get out and vote. What's happening in the other places that's impacting on whether our vote counts or not? That's the position that I take. So that I agree with everything the two advocates have said, the three advocates have said. We got to get out there and vote. More and more people are voting. But if there are obstacles to that vote, what happens? In Georgia, many obstacles. More and more people are voting. But the woman is projected to have a narrow chance of winning because there are obstacles to the vote. They changed the districts around. They changed the voting laws so that folks have to have division. You can't even pass out a sandwich if you're standing in the line. And why is there a line? Because they cut back on the number of voting stations. Now, if we fail to understand that, just to say, we got to get out and vote, we got to get out and vote, that ain't going to help us. Why is it even close that this fool, Herschel Walker, is maybe going to take over the Senate seat? It's nice to say you got to get out and vote, but somebody is pushing the levers already behind the scene to make Herschel Walker that close to being, now I don't know if he's going to win or not. I don't know if he's going to win, but three of his women have come forward and said all these things, but yet the Christian right has said, well, we're going to put our arms around you, sons. Yeah. Even though they never put their arms around anybody black in their life, they're going to put Herschel Walker in there. Why about that. And you just can't think about it and say, yeah, we got to get out the right to vote. But the man is this close to tipping the scale of the balance of power in the United States Senate. Why is that happening? So I challenge you, black folks, vote. Yeah, we're going to vote. I'm beyond that in this room, because everybody in here is going to vote or has voted already. I'm challenging you to think about some of these structural reasons why this may happen. So to answer your question, Talina, that's the segue into the answer to the question. Why is it that they're in a position to even raise the kind of hell that they do if the vote goes down and we do maintain the balance of power in the House? Not in New Jersey, not in Newark, because we're going to vote. But if the vote goes down and we lose the House, if the vote goes down and we win the House. All right, so what happens if we win the House and if we win the Senate? There may be more armed insurrection. There may be more armed insurrection. And the question becomes, what is the military going to do? It was just that close to the insurgency on the 6th, which Larry talked about. If the army had come out, we'd be up the creek. This time, there were people in the army who said, we're not going to do that. This time, there's testimony now going on with these oath keepers and the 1%ers and whoever these people are who led that insurrection at the House. And I'm listening to what they were saying. They had all kinds of armament in the hotel. They were just waiting for the order to come. We're going to come out and everybody's going to shoot. And then you see pictures of some of the police who were in the house just opening up the passageway so that these white people could come in. And you had police there who were armed, and only one policeman shot that one woman. How come the rest of them weren't shot? If you indeed had gone in there, if we had just tried to go up the steps, much less get into the door, much less into the section, there would have been a bloodbath. It would have been just like Wounded Knee, where all those Indians got shot, even though they weren't doing that much. So to answer your question, I predict that there may be insurrection, there may be attempted insurrection, and it will be dependent upon what the armed forces at all levels, the Army at this level, the state police, and the local police, it depends on what they decide to do, because we know we got inside these places. We got racists, we got white supremacists, we got fascists. If they decide to turn against what happened, we don't know. Now there is a prescription for this coming up right now, down there in Brazil. The good guys won. Lula won. I was in Brazil 3-4 years ago, and people showed me a neighborhood, and it had a house that was run down, and then they had a house that was not run down. It was good, relatively new. And the people pointed out to me, and they said, before Lula, after Lula, because Lula was president at one time. Now he's come back, now he's won the election. The man said, I'm going to vacate, but you got thousands of people in the street in Brazil right now saying, we want the army to take over. We want the army to take over. The army has not taken over yet. But if they do, it will return Brazil back to where it was in 1965, 1972, when the army did run the country. That's what I want y'all to think about, people. Not whether we're going to go and vote, because we're going to vote here. But because the obstacles have been put in our places, there's a possibility that there may be the kind of incorrect result that we want. And if we do win, these other places, other people are in power to take over, I think we need to think about what kind of organization we need to protect ourselves. What kind of organization do we need to protect ourselves if that happens? And I'll leave it with that. I hate to be a downer. I hate to be the one. I would love to be the one that's all excited. But this is reality, y'all. We can't win by having excited speeches about what we're gonna do if we don't have the wherewithal to get the job done.
Let me say this. Here we go. Remember the Civil War? You know, we were outnumbered and outgunned. There are some Negroes who fought on the side of the Confederacy, by the way. We finally won anyway. If we do not voting, even if we get them in office, we're going to have some trouble. But that's the way it is. We do not believe that if we come out and vote, that everything's going to change overnight. But we do believe, because we got the power to do it, is to step forward and change things little at a time rather than changing nothing at all. Yes, it's going to cause a lot of trouble. It's going to cause some people's life. But it already has. It already has. If you think that I think that if we don't go out to vote, we go out to vote, things going to change overnight. No, I don't think that, because I know better than that. I'm 79 years old. I was in the civil rights movement. I don't think that. But I think this, if we don't vote, if we don't get out and march, if we just, we can't win. I'm very much afraid we don't have this forum again. But we might be having it in chains.
All right, tell us about it.
Mr. Rocker, you bring me to my last question, because we're probably going to have forums like this again and continue to do it. We've been doing it for decades. But after this midterm election, we have a presidential election. And that gives us 2 years to get ready, to get working. And so I want to talk now about the work ahead, because all of you are workers. All of you have been champions for organization, for getting things done, for moving our people forward. And so I want to hear from each of you, what is the work? The Democrats stay in control, the agenda that they push might not be the best agenda for Black people, right? If Republicans take control, then we are set back at least. Either way, organizing must be done. And so what do we need to do over the next couple of years, and as we move forward, to ensure that the issue of the Black vote is no longer an issue, that it is automatic that Black people in mass who are eligible to vote will vote. So what do we need to do? What is the work? I'm going to start with Mr. Ham.
If we win, we fight. If we lose, we fight. We fight. If we win, we fight. If we lose, we fight. We survived Trump. We survived Reagan. We survived Nixon.
That's right.
But we'll survive the next fascist they put. But we got to fight. And we got to organize. So this is a very important question. What are we going to do after November 8th? Next year, 2023, is the legislative race. The state legislature and the government are up for election next year. Remember, in the last gubernatorial election, Chitterelli, the Republican, and the Trump Republican only lost by about 50,000 votes. The voter turnout in the gubernatorial election was comparable to the voter turnout in the presidential election. It was almost as high. Both of them had over 1 million votes. Murphy only won by about 50,000 votes. And who helped him win those 50,000? Black people helped him win those 50,000 votes. Because we came outnumbered. So what's up next year? There are a lot of offices up next year, but I believe governor, state assembly, state senate, the state legislature. So if you look at the Republican strategy, their strategy is not only national, it's also state-based.
They have been seizing state legislatures one after another. In fact, the Republicans control a majority, a slight majority of the state legislatures in the United States. That's why they're always arguing on states' rights. That is not the federal law, it's the state law. But see, they use the state laws to launch themselves to make it federal law. Now that the Supreme Court has ruled in the Dobbs decision, taking away women's right to an abortion, now that they've ruled that, they've passed these laws at the state level, but what has just happened? What's happening now is that all of them, those that are running, because some of them, the half of the Senate is up this year, they're all saying they're going to pass a national ban on abortion. They're going to make it federal law. And you know what Senator Ron Johnson said? He said, next is Brown versus the Board of Education. So you got to understand how this thing is working. They're going methodically, step by step, to seize power. And that's what they're doing. Herschel Walker, they don't care how stupid he is. All he got to do is push that button yes to vote the way they want him to vote or no. That's all they interested in. They know he ain't gonna make no speeches. He ain't gonna be no PhD. They only want him there because they know when it's time to vote yes, when they want yes, you push that button, and no when they want no. So, what do we need to do in preparation? After Tuesday, we need to once again engage in ongoing massive voter registration. Yes. Massive voter registration in preparation so they don't take back the state legislature in New Jersey. Right. But the other thing we need to do, we need voter reform in New Jersey. We need to pass same-day registration in the state of New Jersey. What is same-day registration? Why is it when you go to vote on Tuesday, if you're not registered, you can't vote? What's the reason for that? This is not 1822. We got computers, we got everything. There should not be no cut. Why was the date for voter registration cut off on October 13th? There's no reason. All of this re-registration and cutoff dates and this and that, all that is designed to suppress the vote. There's voter suppression going on here in New Jersey, and it's structural in nature. There's a same-day registration bill in the legislature now. We should all be pushing for that same-day registration bill. So we need ongoing voter registration, ongoing voter mobilization. We need voter reform, and then we need to get ready for the elections in 24. It's going to be U.S. Senate. It's going to be presidential. And Julius is right in this. It's going to be violence. See, for a while, the ruling class in this country had everything at least manageable. You know, there was uprising in the 60s, but that uprising was really contained in the urban areas. Now the situation is shaky. You know, when they have elections in Brazil, even in Jamaica, people get killed. And they like 2 or 3 people. It'd be like 20 people get killed. And like, I mean, that's how they suppress it. Look, in Arizona, they had armed vigilantes at the drop boxes to keep people from voting. For the first time in decades, people are openly talking about civil war. That is a real possibility. So we need to get ourselves together in preparation for that possibility. I mean, we need to be organized in preparations for that. But the point I'm trying to make, brothers and sisters, is this. Political power, right now, the struggle is primary elected. We're in a war. And in a war, you fight battles. You don't win the war on the first day. Every election we have is another battle in that war, is another effort to seize a strategic location. Yes, they got that state legislature, but we gonna have this state legislature. They got that governor, but we gonna have this governor. And we got to get this team thing in our minds too. And the other thing is that, yes, it will take the Democrats to defeat the Republicans. But while we are united in the united front to stop fascism, we got to struggle with the Democrats. It ain't no picnic here in New Jersey. We got a Democratic governor. We got Democratic control of the state legislature. We can't get the police brutality with subpoena power bill passed. We can't get the same-day voter registration bill passed. And we're gonna have to struggle. And see, this is where primaries come into play. We don't really grasp primaries. We all come into general election. But primaries are where you put your Democratic progressive candidates to run for office. I ran for U.S. Senate. I ran against Cory Booker in 20. I didn't win, but I got 120,000 votes statewide. 120,000 votes statewide. And that was a step toward power. See, it's like Sister Corrales was saying. Sometimes we struggle for incremental change because we don't have the power to make the structural change. Then sometimes conditions make it favorable for us to get the structural change. But we got to engage, we got to get progressive people to run for office in the primaries. And what do I mean about progressive? And I'll shut up. I know I'm taking too long. But what do I mean about progressive? You got one Democrat that says we need health care. Well, what kind of health care do we need? Well, we need Obamacare. Okay, but that leaves 32 million people uncovered. But there's another candidate in the primary who's saying we need Medicare for all, universal health care in the United States. There's no reason in a country this rich that there shouldn't be universal Medicare, single-payer Medicare for all. That's the difference. It's not like whether this one can talk, and that one can't talk, and this one is this one is handsome, and this one is ugly. I'm gonna tell you something. It ain't even so much about this one is smart, and this one ain't smart. It's about policy. That's what makes the person progressive. The policies that they have. You know, I mean, what's the difference? Democrat that says, I oppose an increase in the minimum wage. Minimum wage is $7.25. You can't pay rent nowhere in America on $7.25 an hour. We don't need a living wage. We don't need a minimum wage. We need a living wage. A living wage would be at least $25 to $30 an hour in the United States. That's the difference between someone that's conventional and someone that's trying to make change, someone that's progressive. It's about the policy. So we got to start putting people in the primaries. People say, well, what about a third party? I ran as a third party candidate. People have a democratic right to form third parties. And people have a democratic right to vote third parties. But the question becomes, in a given situation, is that the winning strategy? If you look at the electoral returns on third parties for the past, let's just say 20 years. Let's say 50 years. In the state of New Jersey, third parties don't get more than 1% of the vote. I respect you running. I respect you saying what needs to be said. But the question is, how do we actually get our people in there? You look at AOC, right? And I only use her because that's the easiest one to come to mind. She's a Democratic socialist.
Right.
She ran for DSA, but she didn't run in independent. She ran in the Democratic primary.
Right.
You look at Charles Barron. Who's more revolutionary than Charles Barron out of New York City?
That's right.
You know, he has his own Operation Power, and that's good. But what does he run as? In the election, he runs as a Democrat, and he wins. And even in his winning, the establishment still opposes him. But he understands that right now, until conditions change, that's the route that we have to take.
That's right.
And thank you, Mr. Cannon. And Dr. Wells, I want to pass it to you, and you can answer that question any way you like, what needs to be done next. But I know that you have challenged school districts and school systems to empower young people to become voters and to be civically engaged. And so, if you wouldn't mind speaking from that particular lens, we have thousands of young people who will be voters in the next election. How can schools, what do schools need to do to change how they operate so that we are building political power in young people within schools?
Well, I think it's a lot more than civics education. I just want to start there. But this conversation about preparedness, I've thought about it a lot because the conditions that you're talking about, many of us have never experienced directly before, right? So the violence, the reality of the legal barriers to participation in society. And I think about what that means for how we face even the possibility of that, right? Because concretely, generations are disconnected from that. And to the point about schools, there's nothing in our education that teaches us about the reality of the history that even allowed us to be present in the schools that we're in. So, like that just, I don't have an answer for that. I just know that I have thought a lot about what it means to be 30, 25, 17, 35, and not have had exposure to conversations like these, to movements in any kind of way, to curriculum and teaching in school that is remotely about you having the ability to discern between policies, Mr. Absolute, right? Because all of that is part of what we get in school. So I think civics education is one way to get at it, but I don't think the type of civics education that we do is enough, right? Because it's ahistorical. And it's not embedded in anything that really connects our children with their history and with the real meaning of self-determination and liberation in ways that they're going to be compelled to be a part of something that they don't have a real concrete understanding of what it means to be part of a movement or what it means to not have technology and the things that you want literally at the tips of your fingers. So I think that there's a lot of thinking that we have to do about how to educate and engage a different mindset in young people because their world is so vastly different than even my world and my education. And I think that that's a real question that we have to grapple with, and then we have to think about the role, as it always has been, of active young people in doing that. Right, so the Shakira McKnights of the world, the Jennifer Mays of the world, how do we really position these young people so that they become the messengers and the educators of this generation of students who need to be prepared to vote and need to understand that, you know what, I mean, for me, honestly, Republican, Democrat, I'm clear that if I don't vote for a Democrat, that the conditions are going to be much worse, right? And if that's all you need to know in order to figure out how to vote. But do our young people have that information? And I think schools play a role in that. I think community organizations churches play a role in that. I think the model that we had in the romanticization of segregation that we had, where the community was working together as an infrastructure to support us, is the kind of mindset that we really need to help build a generation of young people who can participate in ways that are prepared for this entire scenario that Mr. Ham and Mrs. Williams and Ms. Baraka have kind of laid out for us. Because I just don't know that we're prepared in the ways that generations before us were. And I think there's a lot of work to do.
And I think all of us have to become prepared. I remember when the debates around critical race theory were first happening, one of our students from YMS, she called and said, Dr. Wells taught us about critical race theory like 7 years ago. You know, and so as a preparer, we understand that that is one of the roles that we can play. If schools are not ready, then we have to do that. Mr. Williams, I'm sorry, Ms. Rock, I was going to go away. Mr. Williams? Ms. Baraka, yes.
I'll go there.
Okay. Ms. Baraka, what do we need to be doing?
I don't know if you, because this is on your computer, you can go home and do further study on it. There was something right after slavery, called the African Free School. If you all don't know it, that's what our school was named in Petersburg, the African Free School. You need to look up the history of the African Free School. Now that's when, you couldn't go to school, they allowed to go to school. So they created this African Free School. You know who created that? Look it up. I'm not going to tell you. Just right now, you can look it up. Please, it's easy. Just look up African Free School, New York City. I don't remember those names very well anyway. But look it up. And then yell out who put it together. Because this unites with what Larry was saying about whose side you on and how you win the battle. Somebody
Members of the New York Band Mission Society. Yeah?
Richard Allen.
Who?
Richard Allen.
Who is Richard Allen? What? Okay, so I'm the person that looked it up. Come here.
Who's the person that looked it up?
Right.
All right.
What happened?
The Free African Society, founded in 1787, was a benevolent organization that held religious services and provided mutual aid for free Africans and their descendants. In Philadelphia, the society was founded by Richard Allen and Absalom Jones. It was the first, Absalom Jones, the black religious institution in the city, and led to the establishment of the first independent black churches in the United States.
It was actually white.
It was John J. Alexander.
John J. Alexander. That's the African school.
All right, go ahead.
John J. Alexander Hamilton, 1794. That's what I.
So the point that Larry was making about whose party, you have to go with the people that's on your side. It's not about your complexion or your education. It's about whose side you're on. And these were white men who found it because they would not let, we were chattel, they would not let us go to school with anybody, let alone white people. We didn't have a school. They started the African Free, that's why we named our school African Free School.
That was good.
Yeah, right here in Newark, New Jersey. So the question is, as we've always been asking, whose side are you on? Whether it's the woman question, whether it's the LGBTQ community question, whether it's working is unions questioning. The question is, whose side are you on? You gotta pick a side. You can't be you can't swim with one river at a time. That's right. You got to choose the side. And when you choose that side, have the courage to stay there, because it ain't gonna be perfect.
My final statement is going to be, first of all, say that I agree with everything Mary Ann said. But there is more to it than voting. That's my only point here. That's my only point here tonight, is that yes, we can vote, but if you don't look at the big picture, and that's where we're working. And from just taking some examples of what people have said up here today, which I also agree with, it's about exposure, young people. That's why I'm glad to see these young people right here. I told this young man coming up on the elevator, I didn't know it was a meeting grandson, that's when I started exposing my children, my daughters, and then my son. It's about organization. Yep. What kind of organization you have. And it's about the position that you find yourself in that makes it work. It's one thing to say, we want to vote, we want to vote, we want to vote, but in Wisconsin, again, front page of the New York Times, Wisconsin GOP could collect a veto-proof poll. Now, what does that mean? They got a Democratic governor in Wisconsin, but if they win the state legislature, they can win so many votes. The GOP, the Republicans, can pass anything anyway. And the governor can't veto. Gets over what Larry was saying. They passed a law saying you can't have an abortion. Too bad. Pass a law saying that if you want to vote in this day, you got to have credentials, and then you got to have a second credential, and you have to drive 50 miles to vote. That's the law. It can't be changed. So it depends on how we organize. So now I'm for organizing within the Democratic Party. I think we see that you can't do that third party thing in America. Probably, I don't know, maybe ever. We got Ralph Nader is now working for the Democrats to get him elected. He ran 2 times as an independent for president, and he said we can't do it. But if we rely only on the Democratic Party as it now stands to ride our chances into getting some freedom, it ain't gonna happen. It's within the Democratic Party. It's outside the Democratic Party. The only thing that Larry said that I disagree with, he said that the Democratic Party passed the Voting Rights Act. Well, they did, but you know why? Because black people and their supporters were in the streets like never before. President Johnson had no choice. No choice. And I want us to leave with that thought in mind. We have to put ourselves in a position where there is no choice but to do what we want to do. I watched the whole conversation about the new voter rights bill that they had, and they couldn't get the so-called John Lewis bill. They didn't spend so much time trying to make that happen. And what happened in the streets? Very little. When those of us who were in the streets for the voting rights back in the 1960s, and I'm one of those folks who went to jail, I went to state prison for the right to vote. When it comes to that, when you put your life on the line, you give up no choice. When we get to that point, then voting will be very easy. We can just walk right out here and pass out those votes, do our little voting. But until somebody pays those dues, it's not going to happen. That's it. This generation got to do it.
I just want to add, you asked about what's next. Ed Riley and Bob Zaid Muhammad and others are trying to organize, or they are organizing, a national black political convention for 2023. And I think that that is a critical part of the strategy of what we do after November 8th. So I would urge people, if you're interested in working on the National Black Political Convention that will be held here in Newark in 2023, where's Ed at? Ed, raise your hand. Everybody look that way. There's Ed. If you want to work on it, and where's Baba Zaidi? Raise your hand. If you want to work on the National Black Political Convention, see them. If ever, leaflet distribution, see our Vice Chairman, Larry Adams. Raise your hand, Brother Larry Adams. You see him right there. Raise your hand again so everybody can see you. We need people. We're gonna be passing out, get out both leaflets today, tomorrow, Monday, and Tuesday. So we need people to help us with that. So see Larry Adams if you're interested in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
What they want? Oh, do I have any final thoughts?
I saw people looking at me, so I thought I missed something. Is everything okay? I can wrap it up?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Let's give our panel a round of applause. Said, whose side are you on? And so hopefully we'll be on the side of democracy on Tuesday, November 8th. I want to give a thank you to the North Public Library again, and Jane Carr and Alicia Grant for their work on putting this together. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And Mr. Camerari, I don't want to get it wrong, so if you could just provide some clarity around that closing point.
Ladies and gentlemen, just a quick point of information about being prepared for Election Day. An issue raised earlier about you have a problem voting on Election Day, and people did this right here in Newark the last time. You have the right to demand a provisional ballot immediately at the polling site from the poll workers that are trying to some issues, a little extra work. But you must demand a provisional ballot at the polling site. Don't walk away, get that paper ballot, they just take that and immediately legitimacy. But don't just walk out of the polling site without voting. Demand from the polling workers a provisional ballot.
Thank you to Mr.